বিদেশীর বেশে ভ্রম কেন অকারণে মন চলো
O my mind, let us go home. Why do you roam the earth, that foreign land, and wear its alien garb? These senses, these elements are strangers. None is your own. Why do you forget yourself, falling in love with strangers? O my mind, why do you forget your own? Under the hurried exterior of modern India, there is still a yearning for the eternal that has been the core of its existence for thousands of years. The sages of India accepted the reality of God as absolute fact, developing customs and rituals to enable ordinary men and women to attain the superconscious in a natural way in the course of their daily lives. Of all the people of India, perhaps few are as intensely passionate as those of Bengal. Here, volatile emotions, entwined with intense religious fervor, create a special strain of ecstatic devotion that lies dormant, coiled under the soil, awaiting an exuberant release, sparked by a birth, a death, an event, an awakening. For centuries, Bengal has been the cradle of poets and revolutionaries, iconoclasts and free thinkers, and the fervent legions of the God-man. By the mid-19th century, the start of the modern age, a storm of the spirit brewing for centuries in Europe began to spread its shadows over all the world's ancient cultures. India seemed the most vulnerable of all traditional societies to this new practicality. For how could a culture rooted in the spirit of 4,000 years survive hurricanes of cold, hard fact that crushed truths too subtle for its grasp? Western body consciousness accepted as real only that which could be investigated through the five senses. The European mind turned outward. Worldly enjoyment became the goal of life on earth. And as the West impacted on India, she lost her way to both enjoyment and liberation. And indeed in Calcutta, the turbulent capital of a passionate land, young men reeled under the first intoxicating blizzard of European ideas, rumbling like juggernauts through the landscapes of the mind. The future was in the realm of matter, in the manipulation of matter, in the inquiry into matter. The new gods were science and standard of living. Science laughed at the gods must be banished. This was progress. India must awaken to the brave new world and keep in step with the rest of humanity. A judgment that has reverberated down the century. But unknown to the world, 86 miles northwest of Calcutta in the Hooghly district, in the mud and thatch hamlet of Kamarpukur, dotted with little shrines revolving in a healthy joyousness, in an environment not yet degraded by the onslaught of industrialism and malaria, around religious festivals and performances of sacred plays, crafts and harvests, the spiritual soul of India was preparing its response. From out of this humble village hut, born on February the 17th, 1836, came one of the greatest explorers of the inner realms that the world has known. A man who charted with scientific precision in the laboratory of his own soul, each one of the ancient sadhanas, the paths that sages of yore had devised in their single-minded quest for God. The creation of legends is a natural mark of human reverence for what one feels to be greater than oneself. Legends accumulate decorations with the passing of generations, as well-intentioned historians repeat stories with their own additions. But legends take time to grow. Gadadhar was born just 150 years ago. Not time enough for legends. So what we relate here could be simply fables. At the age of 51, Khudiram Chattopadhyay thought he was too old to have a child. When on a visit to a neighboring village, he stopped to rest under the shade of a tree. The Lord Ram, Khudiram reported, came to him in a dream in the form of a celestial boy as green as the blade of durva grass. He pointed to the ground at a distance away and said, "I have been living here, neglected and starving for many days. Take me back to your house and service me." He would not listen to Khudiram's protestations about his humble status. The Shalagram stone is an emblem of Lord Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, who comes to earth in reincarnations as dharma, virtue, when adharma threatens the world. It lay exactly at the spot Lord Ram had indicated in Khudiram's dream. Khudiram, a Ram Bhakt, a worshipper of Lord Rama, hurried home with it and placed it in the household shrine. 9 years later, on a pilgrimage to Gaya to make offerings to departed ancestors at the temple of Gadadhar, another name for the Lord Vishnu, Khudiram had another dream. While his ancestors fed on Khudiram's offerings, a divine effulgence appeared, seated on a throne, and told Khudiram he would come to earth as Khudiram's son. Again, Khudiram's protestations about his humble circumstances were brushed aside. At the same time in Kamarpukur, Khudiram's wife Chandradevi, a guileless and simple woman, also had a divine visitation. One night, she reported later, a radiant light in the exact form of her husband appeared beside her, and the image remained with her all the next day. All of a sudden, Chandradevi was to say, the image of Shiva was alive. The most beautiful light began to come from it. Waves of light filled the temple and came toward me and swallowed me up. I felt the light enter my body, and I fell down in a faint. When I returned to consciousness, I told Dhani what had happened, but she didn't believe me. She said it was an epileptic fit, but it was not so. I felt so well. I knew I was with a child. Chandradevi was 45 at the time. Both Khudiram and Chandradevi, fearing ridicule, told no one of their experiences. The name Ram appears in the given names of many Ram Bhakts. Khudiram's own name ended in Ram. His first child was called Ramkumar, his next, Rameshwar. They named the child of their dreams, visions, and visitations Ramakrishna, but called him in his childhood Gadadhar, Vishnu. Parents of great souls, such as Sri Ramachandra, the Lord Krishna, Sri Chaitanya, have recorded similar spiritual experiences. Whatever we may believe about the immaculate conception of Sri Ramakrishna, that so remarkably parallels those of the birth of the Lord Buddha, Jesus Christ, Gadadhar in the main appeared a noble boy, charming, naive, and endearing. Without the drive and self-assured brilliance that mark out the ambitious, destined to forge their names in the world. He was intelligent and gifted, with a sharp, retentive memory, but stubbornly set against abstractions such as mathematics that appealed not a whit to his poetic soul. He was an obedient child, well-mannered, up to a point. He was also strong-willed. Gadai rebelled against regimentation and rote memorization. Even as a child, he seemed to understand the difference between the conventional knowledge of the schoolmaster and the wisdom of the soul. What use is an education, he said, that teaches you only to bundle rice in a plantain leaf?
বালকের মধ্যে প্রতিভা আছে।
সবই তার কৃপা। কিন্তু পাঠশালায় না গেলে কিচ্ছু হবে না। তোমাদের ওকে বুঝতে হবে, যুক্তিহীন কোনো কাজও করতে চায় না, কিন্তু যদি যুক্তি দিয়ে ওর মনের মধ্যে কোনো বার্তা তোমরা পৌঁছে দিতে পারো, তাহলে ও নিশ্চয়ই তা মান্য করবে।
All the while, during those sylvan years, Gadadhar's body and mind were being made ready from within for the awesome transformations that were to thrust him into the terrifying, unknown, unlimited inner spaces into which most fear to delve. The process was subterranean, as to be almost invisible to those around him. But every now and then, a glimpse of something colossal crashed briefly through the outer personality of the child, breaking surface like a great whale from the deepest oceans of the soul.
গোদাই, 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 গোদাই,
গদাই, গদাই, নিশ্চয় উপদেবতা নজর লেগেছে।
But Sri Ramakrishna was to tell us later, it was the magnificence of the contrast between the white cranes and the dark clouds that had overwhelmed him. His spirit, he said, flew up towards the cranes and clouds, and his body fell unconscious. No one could have known at that time that he had attained his first spontaneous samadhi, a state of superconsciousness, unknown to the more normal, but well documented by the sages of the past. He was 6. An incident that was repeated a few years later. On a pilgrimage to the Vishalakshi shrine at Anur, a couple of miles north of Kamarpukur, taken along by village women who enjoyed listening to the boys sing, Gadadhar fell unconscious again while singing a hymn in praise of the goddess.
গদাই, গদাই রে, কি হয়েছে? কি আছে গদাই? গদাই, গদাই, বাবা গদাই, চোখ খোল বাবা। গদাই, গদাই, ওর উপর দেবী ভর হয়েছে। আমি জানি, গদাইকে না ডেকে এসো, আমরা এক মনে মা বিশালাক্ষীকে ডাকি। মা বিশালাক্ষী, প্রসন্না হও, মা রক্ষা করো, মা বিশালাক্ষী মুখ তুলে চাও, মা অকুলে কুল দাও, মা।
It was a small forewarning of the stormy years of awakening to come, when Ramakrishna, the priest of Kali, would spend days balanced on the borderline of rapture. The least pretext, a strain of music, a divine name, a familiar face, would become a window for his trembling spirit to pass into the luminescence of the inner world.
ওরে ডুব 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 সাগরে আমার মন, ওরে ডুব 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 সাগরে আমার মন, তলাতল পাতাল খুঁজলে পাবি রে প্রেমে রত্ন ধন, তলাতল পাতাল খুঁজলে পাবি রে প্রেমে রত্ন ধন, ডুব 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 সাগরে আমার মন, ওরে ডুব 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 সাগরে আমার মন।
ডুবি রূপ সাগরে আমার মন, ডুবি 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন, তলাতল পাতাল খুঁজলে তলাতল পাতাল খুঁজলে পাবি রে প্রেম রত্নদান ডুবি 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 রূপসাগরে আমার মন
No close relative of the boy who came to be known as Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans, the Great Swan, could be without his or her own share of spiritual power. Sri Ramakrishna said of his father in later years, "My father spent most of his time in worship and meditation. While he was praying, his chest swelled and shone with a divine radiance, and tears rolled down his cheeks. The villagers stepped aside as he passed. They respected him as a sage. Everyone, young or old, was always welcome at Khudiram's cottage. That, despite poverty and suffering, ever radiated a wonderful peace and joy." The passing of his father catalyzed in Gadadhar a dispassion that bordered on depression. But where other children might have retreated into dumb, unreasoning grief, Gadadhar became thoughtful. It was as though he saw clearly, for an instant, the transitory nature of life.
বাবা মানুষ কেন মরে
এইটাই তো নিয়ম বাঁচা জীবন হলো ক্ষণস্থায়ী কিছুদিনের জন্য বাঁচা তারপরে মৃত্যু এর হাত থেকে কেউ পার পাবে না
তাহলে কোনো কিছুই চিরদিন থাকে না
একমাত্র পরব্রহ্ম তিনি শাশ্বত দয়া সনাতন দয়াময়
His father's death made Gadai serious. Childhood games continued, but lost their former zest. Sri Ramakrishna would later recount how much he wanted at this time to take the begging bowl and join itinerant monks. But he did not, for fear he would break his mother's heart. Increasingly, Gadar began to show signs of unusual sagacity. At the age of 11, at his thread ceremony, begging for alms according to custom,
দাও একজন ব্রাহ্মণ কখনো কোন শূদ্রের হাত থেকে প্রথম ভিক্ষা গ্রহণ করতে পারে না
ধনিমা আমার মার বন্ধু আমি যে ওকে কথা দিয়েছি ওর হাত থেকেই প্রথম ভিক্ষা গ্রহণ করব
এরূপ ঘটনা তোমাদের বংশে ইতিপূর্বে না ঘটলেও বহু সদ্ব্রাহ্মণ পরিবারে দেখা গেছে ফলে নিন্দাভাগী হবার কোনো কারণ নেই বরং বালকের সন্তোষ ও শান্তির জন্য ওর অঙ্গীকার ওকে রক্ষা করতে দেওয়াই তোমাদের কর্তব্য হওয়া উচিত
ভবতী ভিক্ষাং দেহি ওম স্বস্তি
saints of many religions are reputed to have shown extraordinary wisdom at an early age. This incident in the life of Gadadhar closely resembles an incident in the life of the boy Jesus. In the midst of a heated argument amongst wise men, 11-year-old Gadadhar made an observation that with a few succinct words stopped the flow of philosophical hot air.
জয় শিব শঙ্কর পরম ঈশ্বর জয় 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 প্রভু অনাথের নাথ তুমি আমার প্রভু ভোলানাথ তুমি আমার প্রভু ভোলানাথ জয় শিব শঙ্কর পরম ঈশ্বর জয় 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 প্রভু অনাথের নাথ তুমি আমার প্রভু ভোলানাথ তুমি আমার প্রভু ভোলানাথ তুমি আমার প্রভু ভোলানাথ।
কি হলো? গদায়ের আবার কি হলো? ওর ভর হয়েছে, ওকে উপদেবতায় পেয়েছে। দেখো কি সুন্দর ভাব, যেন সাক্ষাৎ মহাদেব। এমন ভাব আর অন্য কোনো বালকের মধ্যে দেখা যায় না। বলছি ওর মস্তিষ্ক বিকৃতি ঘটেছে। তুমি কিচ্ছু বোঝোনি।
For the rest of the night, he was in a strange and exalted realm where he could not be reached and none could follow. Another spontaneous samadhi. Thereafter, Gadadhar's spontaneous flights of spirit became more frequent. The divinity struggling to be born within the boy stirred intermittently, and each time it awakened, the umbilical cord that had tied Gadadhar to the world of appearances loosened its hold.